Matters. How's it going? Thanks for joining us. It's 7 o'clock in the East, 4 o'clock in the West, and we've got some amazing folks to talk about the topic, AAPI Millennials, Why Your Vote Matters, sponsored by HLN, APIA Vote, Comcast, NBC Universal, and Island Block. We've got Lisa Ling, journalist and host of CNN's This Is Live. We have Taz Ahmed, who is the co-host of Good Muslim, Bad Muslim, as well as a campaign strategist for 18 Million Rising. Bing Chen, co-founder of Victorious, as many of you know, named to Forbes 30 Under 30. We have Elasiva Maka, founder of Strength and Beauty, empowering, as we look at this, Pacific women. And AJ Raphael, musician and YouTube star. Thank you, all five. And if I got anything wrong, please correct me along the way. Lisa, I want to start with you. And as we look at the topic here of AAPI, by the way, all of you who are joining us at this moment at the top of the hour, it's lasts for about 60 minutes. We're going to be getting some of your responses along the way. And we will get our folks here that are on this hangout to respond. And my name is Richard Louie with MSNBC and NBC News. Lisa, what have you been doing for the election in your work or in your volunteer work related to the topic today?
Well, I will be spending much of the rest of the weekend at campaign headquarters for a particular campaign and just trying to appear at events and encourage members of the API community to get out there and vote. I mean, this is a demographic and a community that has not been as active as I would love for us to be. And I can't think of a more essential, important election than this one. And we really do have an opportunity to have our voices heard and to become a force. And I really hope that young people, old people in the Asian community will take the initiative and be part of this historic event.
Yeah, young at heart, old at heart, anything in between, right? We'll take it. It's not going to work. I say young at heart because I'm kind of pointing to, yeah. Taz, your thought?
Yeah, 18 Million Rising is an Asian American online advocacy organization. And this year we've been doing a lot of fun stuff. We developed an app called VoterVox, which you can download at votervox.org, where people who are limited English speaking can go to the site and enter in their ballot information and get their ballot translated by volunteers who can translate in language. And we have resources on vote.18mr.org. And we released an album called Voices of Our Vote, featuring 32 tracks by Asian American musicians. We're really excited. Yeah.
And 18 Million Rising, for those who aren't familiar with it, what does the 18 million stand for? 18
million is how many Asian Americans are in the U.S., according to the 2010 census. But I think as of last count, we're at 20 million. And I think we'll be close to 22, 23 by the time it's the next census.
You might need a name. Yeah, I like that. You have a great branding problem. You have a great branding problem. It's that. But you know who can help you with that? Is Bing Chen. What have you been doing for the election relative to this topic?
So to be honest, in contrast to my two venerable peers, I'm not firmly involved in sort of the political space. I run two companies in the tech and sort of creative space. But the two things that we have been doing are helping certain candidates specifically at the state level fundraise. So Kamala Harris, for instance, that we're really excited about for Senate, as well as others. The second one on the tech side is our LA chapter of the World Economic Forum has built or collaborated to build something that we call Ballot View, where we effectively help millennials who are very busy, very distracted, and very lazy get easy information about their candidates as well as the propositions they care about. And anyone can visit that right now at ballotview.org.
Fantastic. Elasiva.
So right now in our community, what we're doing is using digital and social media to kind of be more vocal about issues important to us, such as climate change. So working also in spaces like our local polling places to really rally together and kind of talk about more of the issues at hand that are important for most Pacific Islanders, not just here in Alaska, but also on a global level. So people in California, Utah, where there's a really high population of Pacific Islanders.
Right. And AJ?
Yeah, I'm similar to Bing, where I mostly come from the creative space and been doing YouTube for 10 years now. Been able to reach a lot of Asian Americans, especially Filipino Americans, through my music over the years. So I've been really spreading the word through my YouTube channel, through my social networks, through Facebook, and different campaigns, a lot of digital campaigns, as well as when I'm doing live shows. We just did a show at the Wiltern to encourage Asian American millennials to vote. So yeah, just happy to spread the word and help encourage, especially folks around my age who were not necessarily encouraged to vote, especially us as an Asian American community growing up. So, yeah.
That's awesome. And I try to tell stories about Asian American Pacific Islanders that are of all ages during this election, this cycle, last cycle, have spoken at a couple colleges about the importance of API millennial voters. Great. Okay, so this is the question, and you know, I've been thinking about it all day. I've been talking to folks at 30 Rock who are API and millennials and asking them, you know, why their vote matters, actually, to try to get some immediate information. But Lisa, if you can describe quickly for me what you believe API to be and what millennials are, and then how they come together.
Well, that's an interesting question. And before I actually answer specifically that question, you know, I think a lot of us have immigrant parents who have been, who have their citizenship, and they are hardworking people who have been contributing to the economy, contributing to this country for decades, but somehow have felt on the periphery of the system, and for various reasons never felt American enough to get engaged in the civic process. And I do see that starting to change. And I think that the way that Asians, I think, can be effective, particularly people like Bing and AJ, you know, Asians, while our presence in the media, in the mainstream media, is kind of pales in comparison to people of other ethnicities. On the web and in the digital world, it's just explosive. You know, I mean, I think the most popular performers and people on YouTube and on social media are Asian, and I think that and that is a way that I think people can get really connected, and young people, millennials, can have an impact on the API community and can really encourage people to know that their voice does matter, especially in times like these. And again, I can't think of a more important time and election than this one.
Yeah, no doubt. And Taz, as you're out there with 18 Million Rising, a real focus from your group as you look at strategy about youth, how do they discuss about this existence, this identity of being API, which is so complex, you know, 49 origin countries, maybe 54, 3/4, born abroad or that are of voting age, as Lisa was alluding to there. English as a second language, 2 out of 3, right? There's some staggering statistics about how we are this immigrant group. We are this new America, if you will, as well as old America, having been here 2 centuries. What are you learning when you're out there speaking and learning from those who are involved in 18 Million Rising about what their identity is?
I mean, I've been doing youth voting work for about 15 years now with Asian Americans, and it's been pretty consistent. I would say that the issues that are important to the Asian American community are what's important to every other community. It's healthcare, it's jobs, it's the economy. But I think what's different, especially when it comes to civic engagement, is how our community is ignored from the process. And then you get stuck in this catch-22 cycle where people who are ignored from civic engagement don't see themselves in civic engagement, and then they never get involved. And I really don't like to say that Asian Americans are apathetic in the voting process, that they're just experiencing lots of barriers. So I think what we see with API millennials is that they are experiencing a lot of barriers too in being engaged. And what we try to do with 18 Million Rising is try to figure out different ways to find them and different ways to engage them on issues that are important to them, while also shifting them through culture and how they're thinking.
Bing, your thought as a millennial here, what's the thought here?
I mean, I agree with all the above. I think the 2 things that really swayed a lot of my friends and I were, one, a lot of people think if you're in a blue state and you're voting blue, you don't matter, right? But a lot of people forget we have an abundance of local elections and propositions that actually do matter, right? Whether it deals with our incarceration system or the weed that you'd like to buy next weekend, right? And so a lot of people overlook that. I think the other two factors would be people forget that the number of us that show up on how to vote, whether we think it matters or not, self-qualifies how important we are to the next administration. Right, so we can think that we're small, that our voice may not matter, but it's the volume of us that appear there, and that defines how important we're going to be for the next 4 years. I think that's important. And candidly, the final thing is, psychologically, the ire of a few people is always more potent than the sort of meh of the many. And so a lot of the criticism, for instance, that Hillary, who I have voted for, is facing is she's just sort of a moderately enthusiastic candidate among a lot of people. Right, a lot of the enthusiasm of Bernie Sanders, some of it is not translated over. And the problem with that is the ire of the Donald Trump supporters is so much more powerful than that sort of moderate enthusiasm, and at some point potentially could overtake it, and we have to stop that.
AJ?
I mean, I echo everyone's sentiments. I think it might be a little different for like a lot of my friends, not in the industry, just at home. They don't really care much, to be honest. Well, they haven't until recently, until this election. You know, I think this election has really made us open our eyes and realize how important it is for us, especially as millennials, because it's going to directly affect our future. So yeah, I think there are a lot of barriers, as Taz said as well, especially for millennials. It has to do a lot with the media coverage and different things like that. And we're not being reached out to specifically as a community. And I think that's got to change, and we've got to come together and show that our votes do matter as a community.
You know, that's kind of a consistent thing I've heard here, AJ, is that millennials, first of all, stop calling us that and putting us in a corner. Don't over categorize us, right? That's the first sort of reaction. And second of all, if you know we're important, how come you're not reaching out to us? And then the question, AJ, then is how?
I mean, I personally think, well, I feel a responsibility and sometimes a burden to kind of be that voice to, the people who do look up to me. And I know I have a lot of, like I said before, a lot of Filipino American fans, especially a lot of Filipino American guys who want to learn guitar and stuff, you know what I mean? And I feel like it's my personal job to reach out to them. And though all the YouTube videos that I've done these last 2 months for the election have not gotten as many views, and maybe I've caused some people to unfollow and stuff, I see the bigger picture, and I do want to reach out to my fellow artists who have the same kind of reach to use that power and maybe call them out a little bit to engage their audience as well.
So you're saying basically step out in the space you're in, whoever you are, get the message out, and it might cost you something. And I know what you're talking about, because not everybody doesn't see you as this intersectional existence. They see you in this one space. The rest of the
other thing, Richard, is, I think that millennials are incredibly socially conscious and want to be part of the movement. I mean, Bernie Sanders' campaign was an incredible example of that. And I think that there are a lot of millennials who are disenchanted by the system now, are much less enthusiastic because they don't feel like the political system really reaches out to them and encourage them. And I think that millennials, in the same way they came out and supported Bernie and made their presence known, need to demand that whoever becomes president and whoever gets into elected offices this term, give them the attention they deserve. There are more 23-year-olds alive in America today than any other age group. It's a massive population. And I can't even imagine what it would be like if that population really came together and demanded to be heard in a really substantive way.
Well, Lisa, you've traveled the country and the world more than all of us on this panel here. And if you could kind of pull all of that experience together and put it in the funnel for us to try to understand this group called Millennials and Asian American Pacific Islanders, because, they're voting right now, 18 to 34-year-olds, according to the last NBC Wall Street Journal poll, for Hillary Clinton. At 12 percentage points in advance. So Clinton has this clear advantage with youth right now, but she didn't with Bernie Sanders. And when you put in Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, also third-party candidates, it starts to, that support for Clinton goes down. And it really says something about, I'm not afraid of not voting for establishment. I don't know what it says. What do you think?
I mean, that certainly is what it seems to me. And I think my gut is millennials are smart, and they are more globally conscious than any generation that preceded them. And I think that the person who becomes our head of state, the person who's going to represent our country and become the leader of the free world, and is someone who is dignified and who the rest of the world respects. And I think that's one of the reasons why Hillary is getting more support. But I think she needs to do more to reach out to millennials. I mean, again, you saw this massive wave of support from Bernie Sanders voters. So many of them were millennials. And those are people that, if Hillary does become president, she needs to win over, really.
And that, if she were to be elected, would, as you're saying, be one of the opportunities for her. I want to add to the other three who haven't talked about this yet. I want to add something for you to reflect on, and that's this piece of information from API Vote. If you look at your screen right now, that the Asian American electorate will double by 2040. You look from basically 6 million up to 12 million. To the rest of the group in the middle on the screen right now that haven't spoken yet, put that all together with this idea of how to reach the API millennials.
I think it's, so I'll say a couple things. Number one is, we all know that millennials are the largest and most diverse demographic in history. We also know that APIs are by far the most diverse race in this country. We have 50 different ethnicities. We have hundreds of dialects. We have dramatically different religions and faiths and values. In contrast to many of our peers, for instance, in the African American community and certainly the Jewish community, we lack convening structures where we can convene regularly. We don't have church or synagogue that we all go to on Sundays and Saturdays. So in that respect, we're actually at a disadvantage because we don't come together. And so I think the first step in reaching out to us is also looking inward within our community and collaborating and mutually supporting and coming together, right? Millennials is the exact same thing. People talk about disenchantment with established institutions, whether it's 51% of us who are registered to vote are independents, or 25% of us fewer than 6 years ago associated with established religion. And it's because it's not because we're disenchanted, it's because we're so idealistic. And yes, that the onus is a little bit on the system to come to us, to talk to us about things we care about. But candidly, the onus is also on us to grow up, right? You can't expect everything to come to your doorstep. If you want to have a seat at the table, sometimes building your own table with each other is the smartest approach. And so both for millennials and APIs, and I'm going to speak out of turn because I am a millennial and I'm sort of talking against my own people, but I think it's on us to come together more aggressively, to congeal more actively on shared values, and to tell people more actively what we want, as opposed to waiting for it to come to our doorstep.
A call to action there.
And I think you're seeing it, though.
Yeah, oh, you are, okay, great. Taz and Elisiva, reflect on that.
Well, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Taz.
No, I was gonna repeat that and to say that the call to action is huge. It's a lot of the work that I've been doing personally has been just creating platforms and not waiting for people to create these platforms for me. And it's just really frustrating to not break into I mean, this is why Asian American youth are so big on YouTube, right? Like, it's because the mainstream media outlets that are out there aren't speaking to this community. So you are able to get AJs out there because that's where we're creating our counter narrative. Basically, that's what we're doing. We're recentering and we're creating a counter narrative for our community. And that's so key to developing the civic engagement for the API community.
Yeah, I agree. What Lisa had mentioned about being socially conscious and being a millennial, being from the Pacific Islander community where our communities are much more smaller, you see more people being more creative in their ways on how they use their platform and how they are vocal about issues such as climate change, using YouTube to like stream a lot of the issues like on what's going on home in New Zealand, in Tonga, and Fiji. So I think once you become aware of what your able to have as far as using digital media and social media, you're able to now get the message out as far as being what's important to us, and what we're looking for in the next leader, and saying, okay, these are the important issues at hand for us. What are you going to do about it?
I want to show, this is really interesting. This goes back to what Lisa started us off out with here, and that is this little bit of information, and it comes from APIA Vote, Alton and Christina Chen over there. Thank you so much. This is who is the immigrant vote. You look at California specifically, you have Asian American, that's about 38%. Very, very big, right? Not a surprise, I think, to many on this discussion. But nationally also, and this has to do with the APIs being the fastest growing group, as well as the largest number of immigrants in terms of data coming out last year. 28% there nationally are Asian in the immigrant vote. And then you look at this. This is maybe informative to what you see here now on screen. When you look at the citizenship rate of Asians in America, you're looking at 66% at the lowest. When you look at those who decide to become registered, 56%. Look at that. It's almost a 15 percentage point difference between white and black. And then actually after then registering, voting among that group. Again, at the bottom, and then voting among registered, pretty much at par once you get that. But it's the citizens that are able to vote, and again, for whatever reasons, 47%. So these numbers just don't look good. And to Lisa and to Taz, your thoughts on putting together this high immigrant percentage in California nationally in terms of those who are able to vote, but just not getting out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the reasons we see these low numbers is many Asians don't feel like they can really identify with a lot of people who are in public office or running for public office. And you know, it's a little irrelevant to this particular election, but I would like to see in the future more Asian Americans really getting into politics and allowing themselves to be groomed to be on future ballots. I mean, I think you've become incredibly successful as a young person. Your voice is so needed, and I think you have, the ability to reach so many more people than in mainstream media, and we really need those incredible voices and intelligent minds and galvanizing characters to get out there and lead this contingent of potential voters. I mean, I think that is the next step, is trying to groom members of the Asian community to pursue public office. It's not glamorous work, it's not high-paying work, but we need that kind of representation to create change.
Yeah, I want to speak to the needs for in-language materials for our community. I think especially with the numbers, especially on your last slide, when you were talking about the immigrant community, particularly for the Asian American communities, there's such a range of diverse languages, especially in California. Here in LA, Asian American voters make up 15% of the population. Of the people, I think, of the people registered to vote. And to mobilize them to vote, because there's so many different languages, you have to reach them in not just Chinese and Korean, but you also need to reach them in Tagalog and Samoan. You have to meet them where they're at, and I don't think that's happening. I think for me, what I see when I see these slides is that once they're engaged in the process, then they're going to go vote. But because they've been so marginalized and ignored from the process, that first connection isn't happening. And I think one of the things that we learn when it comes to civic engagement is once someone votes, then they're more likely to vote again and turn into habitual voters, which is why we need to get people out for that first time and get them young so that this can be a habit and they'll turn out. Yeah,
I mean, APIA Vote has found that once you vote 3 times, you're in for good. I mean, you're going to keep on going. So you just got to get the magic number 3. Elisiva, Bing, AJ, you see the numbers here. And she's really talking about, Taz is bringing up that, again, the complexity of this community and how to reach them. Reflect on what you think is the best way to reach these other groups that fit into this big red slice of the pie you see here.
I'll give you something soft and qualitative. We talk about the single quality that defines millennials as authenticity often online, right? And that's certainly the greatest currency when you're a personality on YouTube, on Instagram, or otherwise. The reason that's the case is because the world is far more connected through device access, broadband, and so forth, such that the person that you are on Facebook, publicly in office, etc., is often expected to be the same person that you are on the inside. And so I think that the message here is that in order to reach people, it really begins once again in you as a human being. Are you an authentic human being? Are you able to project that authenticity? And are you able to consistently employ that over time? The second thing I'd say is this is really not only a battle cry for our people, but really a warning sign for everyone in Washington. As you said earlier, Mr. Louis, not only are we the fastest growing immigrant population, we will be, because of that, the second largest race in a few decades, right, behind Hispanics, right, within 3, I believe, right? And so this is really a warning sign of, as you know, our people's trust cannot be bought overnight. It takes literally millennia in some cases, right? And so this is the time to invest in this community now, because we all see where the numbers are going.
Love it. We're talking in 140 characters today. That's the way it works. That's the way it works. Rest of you folks?
I think that, with the immigrant vote, what we do in our community is, we meet in a lot of the small spaces like our churches, the schools. And if you think about it, majority of, a lot of our communities, the Samoan, the Tongan community, much of our parents aren't citizens. So they feel that there isn't a need. So they leave it to us millennials to kind of take on that task of saying, all right, you go and do that part for us, and a lot of it's also the language barrier, like Taz had mentioned, that, a lot of the materials aren't even in our languages and have yet to be translated for us to even understand. So again, it does leave us that responsibility for us millennials to, if you know the language, definitely be one to actually be vocal about it and actually speak to a lot of the elders about the issues at hand, and really kind of dedicate your time to really meeting them halfway, because I think that's what they want to see, is that face value in that time of having that space.
Yeah, I think that even without the language barrier, for example, my mom, it really took me to really just ask her, like, hey mom, who are you voting for, for us to even have that conversation. And I think maybe growing up, we never really talked about it, never even talked about it with like my aunties or anything, but it really took this election for me to be like, mom, who are you voting for, and why do you feel this way? Also with my family, my sister is gay, so we had a lot to talk about, and I think it maybe a lot of Asian Americans growing up, we kind of keep our feelings to ourselves a little bit, especially our parents. They're all just they have this like sense of pride, and they just want to take care of us and provide for us. I think a lot of my Asian friends growing up didn't even give their parents hugs and things like that. So I think it's
do a hug. No hugs. No hugs.
Yeah, I think it's just really important to communicate.
Yeah, I always say, we've got this like 1 foot radius, don't get near me zone. It's the API zone. You cannot get closer than that. What did your mom say when you asked her about how she was going to vote?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What did your mom say after you asked her, who you're going to vote for? What do you think of the election? What did she say to you?
It was really kind of like face value stuff. I mean, she did say she was going to vote for Hillary, and which was not surprising to me, because she's voted Democrat in the past with Obama, and we're Catholic as well. Like, we go to a Catholic church. Like we lead the music ministry, but my mom didn't really go any further than that. But all I remember us talking about too is like, hey, what if my sister's name is Jasmine? What if she wanted to get married? And if that right was taken away, how would we feel? And I think that's really opened our eyes recently as well. And I don't think a lot of Asian American families even talk about that issue if it's being brought up.
Yeah, no, I know what you're talking about. It's almost kind of like, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing that up? Are you feeling okay? Lisa, to everybody on the panel and who might be with us, we're at the bottom of the hour, 30 minutes in. We got another 30 minutes, and hopefully we'll get some engagement shortly that we can share with the panelists. But what are we missing to all of you, what are we missing in this conversation about AAPI millennials and the importance of their vote, number one, but number two, that engagement that we've been trying to, put our finger on so far. Lisa, what's your thought?
Well, I think right now, I think the problem is just that there aren't a lot of people for millennials to get excited about. It was a pretty remarkable, a really remarkable scene to see how many people got on board the Bernie Sanders claim. I mean, it was really moving and exciting because even though he's been in Congress for a long time, he is so anti-establishment. He calls people out, and he's such a justice-oriented candidate who speaks on behalf of people and the disadvantaged. And I think that millennials, while I think that millennials can take it upon themselves to get engaged, I'd like to see our political leaders reach out more, and because that population is there and they're hungry and they want to be engaged. But right now, I just don't, I don't think there's as much enthusiasm by any means, because the candidates, the two main candidates at least, haven't really been reaching out to them.
Yeah, I want to build on, and before whoever wants to react to what Lisa said, I do want to bring up some data that I think maybe Lisa, you were looking at what I've already been putting together here, but this right here shows how it's tough to see on the screen, I apologize, but the lowest line there, that's API young folk. And if you look at API young folk, 20-somethings throughout the years, we've always been at the bottom. That lack of enthusiasm is especially a problem, evidently, for those who are 20-something and happen to be Asian American, Pacific Islander. And although there's been some ups and downs, this lower line that you see of all of these lines, and I know it looks like spaghetti, that's the one that has not been good for us. And is it not good candidates, as you're saying, which is one part of it, Lisa? Or is it also that we just can't get it together and we don't have that sort of chutzpah to get out there and be engaged? To the rest of the folks, Taz, Bing, and Elasiva and AJ.
Well, I mean that chart that you showed was a midterm election, and that was the last data point was from 2010. I truly believe in the Obama effect when it comes to voting. I think for what I've seen since doing this work, that people really got engaged in voting after 2008 in a way that was different than previously seen. I think what's different about this generation of APIs is they probably, Obama's been in office for 8 years, so this is probably their first time voting, and they're not excited about the candidates that they're running, that they have to pick from. The other thing that I wanted to mention is just that I think what is happening in this election cycle, which is different than, it's not just about not having candidates that we're excited about. We're in a campaign environment which is very fear-driven. I'm speaking as a Muslim, and just how Muslims have been treated in this election cycle. We've been told that we're banned. We've been told that we're Trojan horses. We've been told that we need to wear armbands. That I know that the Muslim American community is going to be turning out in numbers greater than they probably ever have before, just because of how we've been treated in this election cycle. And I'd love to figure out how to make that connection between the broader Asian American community and the Muslim community, and how do we build on that solidarity?
It seems like that sort of idea of fear, and quote unquote, is working, at least in preliminary numbers when we look at, for instance, Latino Americans as well, right? Some of the early voting is saying they're coming out in force in Florida, they're coming out in force in Nevada. And so Elasiva, when you look at this idea of fear, does fear get people to vote?
I think in some ways, especially looking at it from my perspective in my community, I think for us, we've sort of become sort of this fearless community because we're the smallest group. And so I think looking at it from the millennials perspective, we're looking at it from almost like a rebel cry, which is why you've seen so many of them back Bernie, and now looking at it with Hillary's stance, the hashtag I'm with her, and then looking at it from a movement of like, what is going to be the stance where a lot of us can be fearless and brave and courageous, whereas before our voice never really mattered. We were always behind the scenes. We weren't really didn't care because a lot of it had to do with, the language barriers, the fact that most of our people in our communities were nationals and not citizens, or people such as my parents who, my father who's been here for 40 plus years and has yet to become a citizen. It has to do with everything and seeing, millennials being the responsible people and saying, okay, so what's important to you and what's going to work?
AJ, can you hear me? AJ, you
No,
there?
sorry, I didn't hear anything after.
Okay.
I'll see this.
Your thought about what Ella Siva said?
I mean, it is. I think it is a fear thing. I think fear does help get votes because it's certainly in the recent. Not that I was planning not to vote, but it definitely has scared me with everything that's going on and all the Facebook videos and things like that. So hopefully that helps, but hopefully everyone is just doing their own research as well. And I think that gets lost in social media. That gets lost in a lot of propaganda on Facebook and people who are just reposting things without even looking it up. So yeah, there are so many different obstacles like that was brought up before. We just got to continue doing what we do as leaders of our small communities. As she was saying, we have like our small churches, and I have this thing every 8th of the month where I bring Asian Americans with my friend Dante Bosco. We bring Asian Americans to downtown LA, and we try to engage them in not only the industry but civically as well. And I think that a lot of the way we are perceived in mainstream, like through the movies and the way Asians are perceived as well, has a direct impact on the way we are a community, even through politics.
Yeah, I mean, look, like if you look at what motivates human beings in general, fear always trumps optimism. This is empirically proven, right? This is not an opinion. And unfortunately, we have a candidate who on one side of the aisle is painting an aggressively misogynistic, racist, xenophobic future. And that fear from people, heavily of which are less educated, lower income, and so forth, is going to be more powerful than the optimism of the other side. It's just the way the human brain works. And so fear absolutely matters in this, whether we want it to or not. And so we have to counteract that, of course, with productive action.
I want to build on both what you said, Bing, as well as AJ, just at the tail end of this conversation on that last topic. And yeah, I mean, it's a storytelling. It's the portrayals, right, of this group. And Lisa, if you've been a lifelong storyteller, what is the best way here to tactically engage folks one-to-one and leave them with a story that they can feel like, I understand the community, I understand voting and civic engagement now?
Anybody want to? Are you asking me this or?
Yeah, you, Lisa. Sorry, that was you, Lisa. Yeah, you are a lifelong storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, Richard. Honestly, I think we've all been trying to answer the same question. How do we galvanize people into showing up, because it's so essential? And I think that Taz kind of hit the nail on the head. Like in the Muslim community, there's a galvanizing issue, right? And there's a candidate that is openly spewing really repulsive things about members of the Muslim community as well as other communities, and that I think is igniting both sides to vote. I mean, the thing about Trump voters, they are registered. They've registered in record numbers, and so much of that population is voting because they have been they've been brainwashed into believing that the world is coming to an end, and that, you know, everything that they hold true is being targeted, right? And I think that for much of the Asian community, as long as we seem to be making a decent living, and we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want to, you know, I think across the board in Asian culture, you know, there's that saying, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So let's not, you know, why do we need to have our voices heard? Let's kind of go along with the program. And there are real issues at hand here, you know, and I think that it's incumbent upon all of us to convey these things to the people we know, to the people that we have influence over. There are economic issues, there are social issues, there are international issues that, you know, where there's a clear choice between two diametrically, oh, sorry, hold on, my daughter has just come in.
Oh, there's a voter. There's a potential voter. Go get her. Go get her. There's a potential voter.
Who's running for president, Jet? Who's running for president? Can you come on, tell our friends? Come on, tell our friends. She's totally engaged, by the way, in this process. Who's voting for president? Who is the president right now? Well, she doesn't want to talk. She just woke up from a nap. Anyway. You know, I think that we again, we have this opportunity, and it's incumbent on all of us to really make our voices heard in our communities, because there are real issues at stake.
Yeah, I think, I mean, now thinking about it, it's just like, I just feel like we just got to do more. I mean, maybe, you know, what Taz was saying about the Muslim community. Yeah, there's an issue there that they need to stand for, and I think maybe a lot of us it's been in our, just the way we were raised, that, you know, everything's just fine, and if nothing is like specifically attacking us, then we're all good, you know. So I feel just a need to stand with our Muslim brothers and sisters, stand with our Latino brothers and sisters, and any other group has been oppressed, and yeah, I just feel like we need to do more.
Well, another reason why I think our voices matter so much is, you know, as we talked about, the Asian community is growing astronomically, and it's on its way to becoming the second largest minority group in this country. And without sufficient representation, you know, a lot of anti-American sentiment will inevitably be directed our way, right? And so in order to combat that, it's really important for us to try and get in front of that, and make sure that we are engaged, that we're voting, that we are trying to groom people to become to pursue public office, and I hope that we can figure out a way to make this collective effort. As disparate as our communities are, I think that the numbers prove that it's time that we figure out a way to come together, because, I mean, as we're seeing now, the Trump campaign is built on fear, and that fear could very well be directed at, you know, at Asian Americans in a very short period of time, because of the progress that is made in Asian communities, and the explosive growth of the Asian community. And I do think we need to get in front of it.
Yeah, and just before, we have some questions I want to throw out to the group in the final 20 minutes we've got right now. But yeah, when I think about, like, how do we tell the story about AAPI's Asian Americans Pacific Honors in this election, and it's AJ and Lisa, you brought about, you know, sort of bringing together, coming together, and we went through an unfortunate last 2 years when we talk about civil rights and human rights across our country. A question of where are we when we think about our ethnic core, where we are in terms of what we see as race. And when we look at the last 2 years in Ferguson and Baltimore and Florida and all sorts of other places, and here in New York City, for instance, it reminds me of Los Angeles, it reminds me of Rodney King, it also reminds many of the 1960s. And this sort of sameness is there. And I think that when we can tell stories at how things happened in the 60s, people did something, they voted. They did the same in 1992 in California after Rodney King. The voting went up. We now just finished 2 unfortunate years of 2015 and 14 when it comes to civil rights questions and human rights questions. And I think that should incite us. Those are the stories we can tell to say we need to stand up again, because we want to make sure that it's good and it's right and it's sound based on Lisa's daughter coming up to the camera right there a second ago, and who it will be for not only millennials but for that generation. We have a question from Carolyn Fan, and she asks this: how do we hold our elected officials accountable? How do we hold our elected officials accountable to anybody on the panel?
You vote or don't vote for them.
Basically, yeah. I mean, I would add to that, the thing that happens after election day is that after you vote for them, you have to go do, lobby visits, go visit your elected, go tell your elected that your community voted. That's one of the #1 reasons why we should be voting this election cycle, not just so that we can elect a candidate, but so that after November 8th, we can go to our electeds and say, yo, you need to be listening to us. X percentage of us voted in your community, and these are what's so important to us as our community and what you should be paying attention to us. And I think that's been kind of missing. This usually happens around presidential cycle. People get really hyped up about the presidential candidates, but we really need to be talking about how do we build community power so that our issues can be advocated on.
Anybody else?
I agree with what Taz had mentioned as far as, holding your elected officials accountable, going to places where they speak, challenge them, really, address the issues that you feel are important in your community, and be that person that's going to be that voice to say, hey, this is what's been going on, how is it that you're going to be able to meet our needs and provide resources that are going to actually be able to move our community forward. A lot of them, they say what they say, but, like Taz had mentioned, as soon as, November 8th is done, you definitely want to be able to make sure that you, get caught up, you hold them accountable. And again, you definitely are there to make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else? I have another question. This is coming in, and the question is from those that are watching. And by the way, there's a live viewing party happening in Nevada right now. So if you're listening, shout out to all of you out there. Thanks for being here and hanging out with us today. So the question is, what can community organizations do more to reach out and engage millennials? And yeah, are they reaching millennials? Are they focusing more on older folks or different groups? What can CBOs do more to any of you?
I'll give you one small specific thing that a couple of organizations in LA are doing. On Tuesday, not only are some businesses letting their employees take the day off to vote, but B, a lot of community organizations are having basically like lunch, bringing, like you go to Panda Express, get food, or McDonald's and get food, and you go vote together. So voting ceases to become political or civic duty. It becomes a social activity. And we all know how much our people love food.
Just a little.
No, I mean, nonprofits are the eyes and ears of how we get policy implemented in the community. And nonprofits are crucial to doing this work and to making sure that our communities engaged. They, for our VoterVox app, for example, it got translated from community folks, from nonprofits. We're partnering with a bunch of nonprofit organizations for that. And that's the conduit to that. I think I don't think this has been mentioned yet, but I think it would be great if nonprofits could be the place where polling places are hosted. I don't think there's been a move to have that happen yet. There's been a move to have polling places at art centers and what have you. But I think having a polling place at different community nonprofits would really encourage people to go vote.
Anybody else?
Oh, go ahead, AJ.
My bad, bro.
No.
On Tuesday, which happens to fall on the 8th, like I was saying before, I usually get a bunch of people, Asian Americans and people who support our visibility together. And it happens to be on the 8th, which is really cool. So we're having like a little live streaming party with our good friend, Jeff Yang, who, does a lot for the AAPI community. He's gonna lead a panel of other pundits, and we're going to be chiming in. And I think it's just important to get everybody involved. This is going to be my first time getting together with other, I guess, Asian Americans, during election day. So I think if we have more of those, kind of things, and with leaders who are not afraid to speak up, and especially my artist friends and musician friends. I think when we start saying stuff online that we're passionate about, we're mostly told by our haters or whatever. They're like, yo, stay in your lane. You need to block those voices out, and just continue to be passionate about what we are passionate about.
I'll throw another question out to all you folks, and one is, what inspired you to vote? One person who's been watching us so far, that's Michelle Lee, I believe, saying that she was an undecided voter for quite some time, and then she wants to know from all of you, what did you consider in voting? What are you considering in voting? But I want to go a step further and ask you, what if you can remember the first time you voted, what kind of got you? What was the energy that got you to vote? And since then, how many times have you voted, whether it be presidential, local, on cycle, off cycle, or whatever? Lisa, we'll start with you since you're on the left side of my screen right now.
You mean because I'm the oldest, Richard?
No.
I voted.
No. I think I'm the oldest. So okay.
Then, when I was a kid, my grandmother was very, very active, and she was always she was fairly conservative Christian woman, and always voted Republican, and therefore I thought I was a Republican too, because that's what my grandma called herself. And when I learned the definition of Republican versus Democrat, I remember just feeling so convicted about being part of the Democratic Party that, I kind of went up against my grandmother, which was something that I'd never really done before, because she was a very educated woman, but again, she kind of, she made decisions based on her faith. And my first presidential election was I voted for Bill Clinton, and I loved Bill Clinton's story. He was a very bright man who was raised in a trailer park by a single mother, and agreed with his party's platform. And for me, I can't imagine not feeling part of the process. It's something that I take very seriously. As someone who was born in America, I was born in Sacramento, California, but I was teased a lot for being Asian. I never felt totally American, even though I was born in America, nor did I feel totally Chinese, because I didn't know the first thing about being from China. I really struggled with cultural identity. But and that's why I always felt like it was important for me to be able to participate in the act of voting, so that I could feel part of the place where I was born, that I could be engaged, and that civics was important to me. And so it's always been important to me since I was a kid. And that's why I'm trying to instill that in my toddler even. We watched the debates. We watched the entire Democratic National Convention. Well, I watched a lot of it. She fell asleep through most of it, but I recorded it for her so that she can watch it later on. I still have Obama's DNC recorded, but trying to engage kids in the next generation is something that is really important for me to do, because I was, it was important for me as a child.
Great stuff. Taz, and we've got 7 minutes left.
I think the first election I voted in, I just looked it up, was the 2000 election with Gore and Bush. I got started in doing politics at an early age. I mean, I was doing environmental politics from really young. But I mean, my critical pivot moment, I know that was one of the questions, was when September 11th happened. And I knew that no one was doing anything in the South Asian community. So I wanted to do something about that. So ever since then, I've been doing stuff in the South Asian and Asian American community to build up the power in our community.
Hashtag power up. There you go. Bing.
I'll narrow this down in the interest of time. I think we all know that like heterogeneous societies rise more rapidly because we have new ideas and different genes that are introduced to people and all that. And by the numbers, we've been a homogeneously run country since our founding, right? And this will sound irrational because of course I care, like all of us, about the issues and who can work a system and who has strong integrity. But for me, the reason why Hillary in this election I think was so important was because in my household, my mom is the boss. And as a good Asian son, like I'm a huge mama's boy. And while both of my parents were very successful and came from nothing, my mom was not only a CFO in a very large company, a multinational corporation, she was also the greatest mom. And I've seen visibly since I was born how powerful it is to have a woman or a successful person who happens to be a woman be able to run two different households, both in a company and a house. And I think that's a privilege that I had in my upbringing that I devote almost all of my success to. And I think it's a privilege that our country deserves as well in her.
Elisiva.
A lot of it does come down to, the president I ended up voting for in the last election I voted for was Obama, and his connection with Hawaii, and just knowing that, coming from a community where it didn't really, we really felt that we really mattered as far as our voice, having that closeness to what he grew up in and knowing his upbringing really elevated his story amongst a lot of Pacific Islanders, and seeing how much more impactful and effective it was, and seeing that, our voice did matter. So looking at it from a perspective of, yes, our voice does matter. Yes, we have issues such as climate change that are so important on our minds right now, because we have such, close connections with what home means to us. And, just really looking at, even spaces such as churches, and how can we be creative? How can we be different about how we can get more millennials involved and engaged, and just really being able to be more active.
And AJ.
My story is pretty short. Of where I first voted, the first president I voted for was Obama, the first time in 2008, and I had just turned 18, and I was so excited because, like, obviously, you can't drink until you're 21. So the next best thing is to vote. You know what I mean? So no, really, honestly, I was just so inspired by Obama's campaign, and I was going to school in Boston at the time as well. So I sent in an absentee ballot and stuff, and so that was just an exciting time for me as a college student.
Got 4 minutes, and in the next 2 minutes, if you can react to these 3 questions quickly, anybody, and I'll just shoot them out there. How do you think Asian American Pacific Islander voting numbers will affect future elections and targeting? That came in through our hashtag Power Up. Another question to reflect on: will more votes today mean that candidates will take our concerns, APIs, more seriously the next election? And then the third: what issues do AAPI millennials care about? You only have 2 minutes to do it, but who would like to talk about it?
Just really quickly, I'll say it's inevitable that if legions of Asians show up to vote on Tuesday, then our electeds can't ignore that population. And so that's something to just keep in mind for future elections. When the numbers grow, it becomes a population that you can no longer ignore.
Yeah, I just want to echo that and just say that yes, go vote, but yes, we also need to make the reports. We need to do election day reports. We need to do lobby visits. We need to have the numbers out there. So support your local organizations. All the nonprofits are not after November 8th to make sure that these reports are getting done. And then after elections, we're going to go into redistricting. We're going to go into census. So all this data is really important to proving that the numbers in our community are there. At the end of the day, electeds are going to pay attention to people who donate money to them, or they're going to pay attention to people who get them into office. And we need to make sure that latter part is that we're doing the accountability needed for that latter part.
Go for it. Anybody?
Yeah, honestly, I'm just excited to see, us collectively as, leaders of our community for Tuesday to see who shows up and votes, and to see if our work reaching out has made even hopefully a small difference in the turnout.
Elisiva Bing?
Yeah, I agree. I think our numbers, API numbers for the future are going to be huge. I think the millennials have yet to create more of a unique platform, because I don't think we're done yet. I think that there's more of an advantage that we have in being able to create more spaces and more ideas on how we can approach future elections to come. And so I think, like Taz had mentioned, if we get more involved and more engaged, even after elections, being able to go to our local elected officials, challenging them, being able to bring up things that never has been brought up before, and just being engaged and active in the process.
Dang.
Rich, you asked about issues too. So very quickly, some of the issues we care about. We care about the economy, which begins with tuition-free college and costs accessible. A lot of us, disproportionately high number of us, are becoming entrepreneurs, as you know. So advantageous tax benefits for small businesses, especially the sub-50s of the world, as well as more advantageous healthcare benefits or continuation of that are very important. And then there's also things like mental health awareness, right? That I think impact our generation pretty heavily as well as our race. I mean, in terms of the final thing, I guess, I agree with everything that's been said. To paraphrase our incredible president, don't tweet, vote. Don't boo, vote. Same thing. So I'm excited to see everyone on Tuesday.
Before we see everybody on Tuesday, I now give you each one last final line. One last final line. And that's like one sentence. That's all I give you. And I want you to think of this as a PSA, if you will, if I were to string these all together. And what I want you to react to is the idea of API millennials and why, if you are, one, you should vote, and two, if you're not, but need to understand the power and the value of that vote. So again, one sentence, and then start with my one sentence is, because it takes a while for the Google Hangout to react to your sound. Just say my one sentence is, and then we'll finish with that. And because Lisa's all the way on the left side of my screen again, that's what happens all the way on the left side of the screen. Let's go left to right. So Lisa, go ahead.
Okay, my one sentence is, I really hope that millennials and members of the API community get engaged, because our voices and our votes really matter. And this election, I think it matters more than it ever has.
Right. And Taz.
I just want to say, don't be bullied into not voting this election cycle. Know your rights. Google your polling place. I wanted to mention that. Don't be intimidated by voters that are out there. There's a lot of voter intimidation conversation happening. This is your right to vote. Go vote. And check out vote.18mr.org. We have a bunch of resources up there.
Bing, and my one sentence is?
My one sentence is, impacting of voting extends beyond the election. We all saw Obama's impact on African Americans, especially in media, TV, film. That cannot be understated.
LSE, my one sentence is?
My one sentence is, go out, vote, be engaged, be heard, tell your story, and your story translates to the issues that are important to you and your community.
Great. AJ, my one sentence is?
My one sentence is simple. It's just our future is at stake, so go vote.
And my one sentence is, AAPI millennials, you can change the outcome and decide who the next president is, whether it be a he or a she. And I thank you all for being here. Thanks, all those who've been hanging out with us, by the way. Thanks for hanging out. And thank you to our fantastic panelists. I've had a great time, and I wish we had another hour, but we've got to end it here. I want to thank all the folks that helped put this together. Of course, there's the HLN Group. We've got APIA Vote. We've got Comcast, NBC Universal, and Island Block, and of course all of the associated organizations that are related to our panelists. Really appreciate the time on this Saturday afternoon or evening, and for the topics that we talked about. So with that, let's all say goodbye. See you later.
Thanks,
Thanks for having us.
Bye.